Danielle Collins versus Satya Vickery. The Danielle Collins and Satya Vickery handshake is less about a quick snub and more about the kind of tension that builds over a full match and then explodes in one awkward second. Miami, 2019. Collins walks off court as the winner, but the match had been messy. Arguments with the umpire, long stares across the net, and a clear dislike simmering between both players. By the time they got to the handshake, it was never going to be warm. Collins extends her hand with the stiffest body language possible. Vickery barely looks at her, gives the quickest touch, and pulls back instantly. No smile, no words, no acknowledgement. It was the kind of handshake where you can feel the dislike without hearing a single syllable. What made it stand out is how little effort was put into pretending. Sometimes players fake politeness at the net, but Collins and Vickery didn't even bother. It was raw, cold, and absolutely unforgettable for anyone watching. Corentin Moutet versus Adrian Andreev. When people talk about bad handshakes in tennis, most mean cold looks or quick brush-offs. But Corentin Moutet and Adrian Andreev took it to another level. Orleans Challenger 2022. The match ends with Andreev on top, but there's no respect waiting at the net. Moutet steps forward, extends his hand, and Andreev takes it. But neither man lets go. It isn't polite, it isn't friendly, it's a grip battle. Both lean in, jaws tight, eyes locked. You can see the words flying, but nothing pleasant is being said. The handshake holds for seconds that feel like minutes, and then it explodes. Moutet shoves forward, Andreev answers back, and suddenly the two players are chest to chest in the middle of the court. Rackets hit the ground, the crowd gasps, and officials sprint in to drag them apart. The whole thing was captured on camera, and it spread everywhere because it broke the unspoken tennis code. The handshake is supposed to be the reset button, the ritual that ends the fight. Instead, it became a fight. For Moutet and Andreev, that day in Orleans will always be remembered. Not for the result, but for a handshake that turned into one of the wildest on-court brawls modern tennis has seen. Vekic versus Tsurenko. Donna Vekic and Lesia Tsurenko gave us a net moment that felt more like two rivals brushing past each other in a hallway than a proper handshake. Zhengzhou 2019, their match had dragged on with tense rallies, line calls that sparked complaints, and visible frustration on both sides. By the time it ended, neither looked ready to play nice. Vekic approached the net with her jaw tight, arm stiff, and offered the quickest, most dismissive touch imaginable. She didn't stop, didn't make eye contact, just clipped Tsurenko's hand like she wanted the formality out of the way as fast as possible. Tsurenko wasn't interested in softening it either. No smile, no gesture, just an equally flat return before turning toward her chair. The entire exchange lasted a heartbeat, but it was impossible to miss. Clips of the handshake made their way online, with fans debating whether it was disrespect or just honesty. Either way, it showed two players unwilling to fake a truce when the heat of the match was still fresh. Tsitsipas versus Medvedev Stefanos. Tsitsipas and Daniil Medvedev's rivalry has always had tension, but their first big meeting in Miami 2018 set the tone for everything that followed. Medvedev had just beaten Tsitsipas in a scrappy, fiery match where tempers boiled more than once. At the net, Tsitsipas moved in for the handshake, but his body language gave it away. No smile, no words, just a stiff motion like he couldn't wait to get it over with. Medvedev, though, didn't let it slide. The handshake was short, almost hostile, and instead of walking off, Medvedev marched straight into a verbal barrage. Cameras caught him pointing and shouting across the court at Tsitsipas, blasting him for swearing during the match. The umpire had to step in, but the damage was done. The handshake had turned into a spark for one of tennis's most entertaining feuds. What makes that moment unforgettable is how raw it was. Tsitsipas looked stunned. Medvedev was furious, and the net exchange turned from routine to explosive in seconds. Years later, people still replay the clip because it captures the exact moment their rivalry became real. One handshake, one argument, and the start of a saga that still grabs headlines today. Patty Schneider versus Conchita Martinez Charleston, 2004. The Family Circle Cup semifinal was already boiling before the final point dropped. Patty Schneider had grown furious with Conchita Martinez's habits, her slow pace between points, and especially her routine of demanding the same lucky ball over and over again. At one stage, Schneider even grabbed the ball and pocketed it, refusing to give Martinez the superstition she wanted. When the match ended, all eyes went to the net. Everyone expected a handshake. Instead, Martinez extended her hand, and Schneider pulled hers away. The the Swiss star walked off muttering, "Disgusting toward her opponent. The crowd gasped, and the cameras caught every second. Martinez tried again in the hallway as they left the court, but Schneider ignored her a second time. No handshake, no sportsmanship, just raw hostility on display. Andy Murray versus Lucas Rosol. Not every handshake is about superstar rivalries. Sometimes it's about one player simply snapping. In Munich, 2014, Andy Murray was locked in a messy, rain-interrupted match with Lucas Rosol. Murray accused Rosol of deliberately bumping into him at a changeover, calling it unsportsmanlike. The tension built, Murray shouting, "No one does that," at the umpire while glaring across the net. By the end, Murray pulled through the match, but when he walked up for the handshake, his face was still twisted in fury. He offered his hand stiffly, almost forcing himself to touch Rosol's. Rosol, unfazed, gave the most casual shake possible, like he hadn't noticed the drama. The contrast was glaring. Murray burning with anger, Rosol radiating indifference. The handshake was nothing more than two quick palms brushing, but the hostility was heavy. The cameras zoomed in, catching Murray's glare as he muttered under his breath. He later admitted Rosol had gotten under his skin, but in court, it was written across his body language. Djokovic versus Nori Novak. Djokovic isn't often rattled, but his match with Cameron Norrie in Rome 2023 gave us one of those rare net moments where the tension was impossible to hide. Early in the second set, Norrie smashed a ball straight into Djokovic's body while his back was turned. Novak spun around, stared him down, and from that point forward, the match had a different edge. Djokovic took control, using every bit of experience to slow the tempo and shut the door on Norrie's fight back. Still, you could feel the undercurrent. Novak didn't appreciate what happened, and he wasn't about to pretend otherwise when it was over. At the net, Norrie extended his hand as usual. Djokovic gave him the briefest shake. No pause, no eye contact, no acknowledgement. It was quick, sharp, and dismissive, the kind of handshake that leaves no doubt about how he felt. The crowd picked up on it instantly, murmuring as Novak walked away without looking back. That clip raced through social media within minutes. It wasn't a blow-up or a shouting match, but it said just as much. Djokovic used the handshake to make his point. Norrie crossed a line, and respect wasn't on the menu that day. Patty Schneider versus Daniela Hantuchova. At the 2005 Zurich Open, Patty Schneider faced Daniela Hantuchova in a tense encounter that tested nerves more than skill. The match was close, with long rallies and a few questionable line calls that visibly frustrated Schneider. Hantuchova pulled through, claiming the win. But the tension didn't end with the final point. When the players met at the net, the handshake was brief and stiff. Schneider extended her hand but barely made eye contact. Hantuchova reciprocated, but the energy between them was awkward and distant. There was no smile, no acknowledgement of the effort they had both put into the match. Just a quick touch of hands and an immediate step back. For spectators, the moment stood out because it broke from the expected post-match sportsmanship. Normally, even in a heated battle, players show a minimal level of connection at the net. Here, the handshake spoke volumes. Schneider was clearly still frustrated, and Hantuchova accepted the win but didn't try to soften the tension. Hercog versus Badosa. Polona Hercog and Paula Badosa gave us one of those blink-and-you-miss-it handshake moments that people still talk about. Istanbul 2020. A scrappy quarterfinal. Emotions running high. Badosa takes the win in 3 sets, and as both players head to the net, you can tell something is off. Hercog steps in, offers the racket for a quick tap, but here's the twist. She doesn't follow through with the proper handshake. It's a half gesture, more of a fake out, and then she bolts away without even looking at Badosa. It wasn't just salty, it was almost theatrical. The camera catches it perfectly. A cold dismissal in less than 2 seconds. Fans online roasted it, calling it one of the pettiest handshakes in recent memory. And in tennis, where even rivals usually show respect at the net, that kind of move stands out big. Hercog made sure her frustration was crystal clear, and Badosa, calm as ever, just shrugged it off and walked away with the win. Holger Rune versus Stan Wawrinka. Holger Rune and Stan Wawrinka have shared some of the chilliest handshakes in recent tennis. Their tension first exploded at the 2022 Paris Masters, when Rune stunned Wawrinka after saving match points. At the net, instead of the usual good match, Wawrinka leaned in and said, "My advice to you is, stop acting like a baby on court." The line was brutal, caught on camera, and instantly went viral. Rune, still a teenager, looked stunned and slipped away quickly. Things boiled again at Indian Wells 2023, only this time Wawrinka won. After the match, Rune reached out for the handshake and got a quick, cold shake without eye contact. Rune wasn't about to stay silent. He fired back with, "You've got nothing to say now." The crowd gasped. Social media lit up, and the feud became unforgettable. 2 handshakes, 2 icy lines, and one of the sport's most entertaining mini rivalries.